Okay, so this is biological diversity of species. So first, the most important thing here is the definition of ecology, because we have done with molecular biology, genetics, everything. So ecology is a branch of biology, is a study of relationships between organisms and their environments. This is not there, this slide I added yesterday, so this is not there in your slide that you have on Canvas. If you want to take a picture or just remember it or write it down, remember the definition of ecology: study of relationships between organisms and their environments. Now, as human beings, we consider ourselves as on top of the hierarchy. We are the most advanced organisms, and we have left footprints on this earth which are hard to remove, right? For example, we have transported plants, animals, organisms from their natural homes to different parts of the world, to the top of Himalayas mountain, to Antarctica and everywhere. We brought pythons to US and whatnot. We have started agriculture, and we have domesticated animals which were not there before. So we started clearing forests, we started growing crops which would give us like a constant source of food. We didn't have to worry. Before man started, before human beings started agriculture, we were wanderers and just gatherers, whatever we would get. Then we have gone one step further. We now have factories and industries, and we are manufacturing things, some very essential, required for our survival, but also we are trashing the earth. So much plastic generated. We have plastic in everything. Radioactivity. Some of radioactivity is good. We need vibration like X-rays and other for medical treatment, but we've also created destructive weapons, which we don't need. We are the only class of organisms in this world who intentionally create things to destroy others. Other animals, when they kill for food, for their own survival. We kill for a lot of reasons, political reasons. When people hunt, that's for pleasure. And climate altering emissions, burning fossil fuels. We realized that we could use the fossil fuels, and we use them. So, because of so many changes that we have caused, this is the beginning of a new era on the earth. It's called the Anthropocene, okay, because of all these changes. And what is the characteristic of Anthropocene? Is there's a high rate of extinction and accelerating change to earth. Whenever we think of extinction, the most common thing that comes to people's minds is dinosaurs, but that was way before human beings evolved. But do you know that at the rate that we are going, presently, the rate like every minute there is a species or a subspecies that is getting extinct because of us, directly or indirectly. We are either directly destroying it, or indirectly we are causing habitat destruction. We need more space to build houses, so we clear forests, clear wild areas, and we build houses. So we are destroying the places where other animals could live. So human-driven changes bring about evolutionary change. When you destroy a habitat, that particular population has to adapt. They will either perish or they will adapt and evolve. So this process leads to what is called speciation. Speciation means forming of new species, making new species. So this is the definition. Process in which one species splits into two or more. So remember, very important definition. Now, what is species? This is the definition, and we discussed this in the last class. A species is defined as a group of individuals or members who have the ability to interbreed with each other. That means to mate with each other, and the offspring that is produced, that means the baby that is produced, is fertile. That means that baby also has the ability to reproduce, right? That entire group is called a species. For example, human beings here are the same species as the human beings in any other part of the world. Why? Because biologically they have the ability to interbreed with the other members. However, population is a small group within the species who are members of the same species but have to be present in the same place at the same time. That is the difference between species and population. So this is, see here, this here shows similarity between different species. So these are two different species of birds, but look how similar they are in their morphology, in their external appearance. While this is the diversity within one species, these are all human beings, Homo sapiens. However, you look at how different they look. So this is the magic of nature. Now we're going to learn about how different species are produced, or what are the barriers. A barrier means an obstruction. Okay, so reproductive barriers between species. Why is that member of one species cannot reproduce, cannot interbreed with another species? An elephant cannot interbreed with a dog, right? Or a cat cannot interbreed with a mouse. So there are barriers. Those are called reproductive barriers. They prevent reproduction. And we're going to learn them under these two categories: pre-zygotic barrier and post-zygotic barrier. Pre means before, post means after. Zygotic comes from the word zygote. What is a zygote? Andrea, do you know what's a zygote? No? Emma, do you know what's a zygote?
Isn't it like part of the reproductive?
Yes, it's part of the reproductive. Karen, what's a zygote?
Is it like the fetus, like when they're just formed?
Okay, I just want the exact word, Nadia.
Fertilized egg.
A fertilized egg. A fertilized egg is a zygote. So when I'm saying pre-zygotic barrier, means barriers that prevent the formation of the zygote, right? So they are happening even before the zygote is formed. And post-zygotic barriers operate if at all interspecies mating has occurred. Let's say an elephant has interbred with a dog, so mating has occurred, but and zygote is formed. Now what will happen afterwards? How will nature try to stop that? That is a post-zygotic, okay? When hybrid means, you remember from Mendelism, hybrid? Remember, what is a hybrid? Can somebody tell me? Yes?
Like two different things combined.
Two different, yeah. So in this case, it's when two different species. Okay, so a sperm from one species and an ovum from another species have come and they have united. So a zygote has formed, and then if that zygote is known as a hybrid zygote. If that individual is born, then that's a hybrid individual. So let's look at this chart here. So you see the two red circular things, the red circular things, the red and the yellow. They are, let's say, individuals of two different species, a male and a female. So because they are two different species, an elephant and the dog, so there would be some pre-zygotic barriers which will prevent them from mating. Okay, no mating. So these are the pre-zygotic, temporal, habitat, behavioral, and we'll learn about it. And then if there is a mating attempt, if the two species, the two members of the two species are still trying to mate, then there would be some more barriers which would try to prevent even that mating. First of all, no mating, okay, is allowed. Then prevention of mating. Then let's say somehow the zygote is formed, then what would be the post-zygotic barriers? These three are the barriers that will prevent that zygote from developing, or if the zygote has formed, the baby has formed, how nature will try to make it sterile, or nature will try to prevent that hybrid from reproducing. Now, if in spite of all of this, it still succeeds, then nature says, okay, you did good. So then that would be no barriers. So let's look at the pre-zygotic barriers first. First is called a temporal barrier or a temporal isolation. Temporal means different times. So these are members of two different skunk species. These are both skunks, but the species is different. Okay, and they might be living in the same area. However, they cannot mate. Why? Because their mating season is different. Their mating times are different. So when one is, unlike human beings who can reproduce throughout the year, animals usually have a different kind of cycle called estrous cycle, and they have mating seasons, right? So they cannot reproduce. So their mating seasons are different. So this is preventing any kind of breeding between these two species, although they are both skunks and they're both living in the same area at the same time. Clear? Temporal. Second is habitat isolation. The two, different species of closely related animals might be living in different habitats. Habitat means a place to live. So this is a garter snake which is terrestrial, lives on land. This is a garter snake that lives in water, cannot mate with each other, right? Then this is behavioral isolation. This is also a pre-zygotic barrier. So behavioral isolation is these two different, birds. These birds, before their mating, they have a particular mating ritual. They have a kind of dance that they perform, but their dances are different. So The male or the female is doing a dance to attract the partner, and they will recognize that particular dance pattern, their calls and the way they move their, their feet and so on. So they will respond only if they see a particular kind of dance, and because they have different rituals, they won't. So this is behavioral isolation. So we have seen, you see here, temporal, habitat, behavioral. All these three isolations you understand. Now these two are, even if there's a mating attempt, what would be a mechanical and gametic isolation? These two are mechanical and gametic. Here you see two species of these particular flowers, okay? And because it's now it's an example from a plant. And these two species of plants, flowers, the pollen from one flower cannot interbreed or cannot fertilize the ovary of another flower. Why? Because the vectors, the carriers of the pollen are different. So the hummingbird can enter into one flower, but the structure of the flower in the other species is so different that the hummingbird cannot bring the pollen from one species and put it in the flower, in the ovary of the other species, right? So this is mechanical isolation. It's just simply not possible mechanically. So they might be flowering at the same season, at the same time. The hummingbird is also there, but because of a mechanical problem, the hummingbird cannot do a cross-pollination between two species. Clear? This last one is gametic isolation. Gametic isolation is, this is a marine organism species. It's called a sea urchin. Okay, so sea urchin species, there might be two different sea urchins living in the same part of the sea, releasing, because these are lower organisms, so they release their gametes into the surrounding sea water. So they might be releasing their gametes, but for the male gamete, let's call it sperm for convenience. So for the sperm of one species to mate with the ovum of the other, their structures are so different that the sperm cannot penetrate the ovum. The gametes cannot fuse because of structural differences. So it's gametic isolation. So they might be reproducing at the same time. However, this species has to reproduce with its own species, and let's say the blue one has to reproduce with its own. Got it? Did we start this?
Yes, it's going.
Okay, great. So these are pre-zygotic barriers. Any questions on pre-zygotic barriers? No. Post-zygotic. Now let's say fertilization has occurred, zygote has formed, baby is born. Now what to do? Now there are other ways in which nature tries to prevent. First is reduced hybrid viability. Okay, viability means survivability, life expectancy. So this particular type of, you see reptile, this is a salamander. This is a zygote formed by a union of two different species, so it's a hybrid. This is very, very weak. It's not very viable. It's not going to survive for long. Okay, very frail, very susceptible to infections and predation and parasitism. So this will die, likely die. So nature is already blocking its survival. Now this kind of species, probably you all know, when a horse mates with a donkey, the result is a mule. Is the mule fertile?
No.
Cannot reproduce. This is sterile. So this is nature's way of stopping this from becoming its own species, right? So stop it here. This is sterile. Or hybrid breakdown. So when we create, naturally or by artificial means, we create these plant hybrids. It's kind of like the same thing. They will produce the seeds and all. So it would apparently seem like they can reproduce, but it won't. In the next generation, there's a complete breakdown of the genes. Yes?
How does organisms becoming sterile happen? What exactly makes them sterile?
Sometimes it's the chromosome number. I'll show you in the from the next slide. I'll show you how the chromosome number affects. Yes, Emma, do you want to add something?
Oh, can you re-explain the hybrid breakdown so I have it?
Oh yes, so the hybrid breakdown is kind of like this, okay, kind of like sterile. So this has become a hybrid, right? And the plant has seeds. When a plant has seeds, that means I assume that it's going to be reproducing in the next generation, or we can just plant those seeds and it will still grow. However, those plant seeds, you can say the potential for those seeds to produce the next generation of plants is very weak. They cannot. Like these ones, they cannot even produce gametes. They cannot produce sperm or ovum. These ones can produce
It's just a lower chance.
It's just so low in survivability, right? So, let's see, courtship rituals.
The waved
here.
albatross is one of the largest birds in the Galapagos. These waved albatrosses are performing their courtship ritual. Notice the behaviors: sky pointing with head held back, beak clacking, and heads bobbing left and right. The complex courtship dance, with very ritualistic movements, can take a long time to complete. Albatrosses pair for life, up to 40 or 50 years in some cases. Most of the entire world population of the waved albatross nests on Espanola Island and is considered endemic to this Galapagos island. These birds land on Espanola Island in late March and leave before January to wander over an extensive range along the South American coast from Ecuador to Peru. Credit Richard Benz, Wycliffe's.
This is another courtship ritual, and you can, watch the video. This is the courtship ritual of giraffe. So, mechanism of speciation. Now we are going into, so that then how is, how are species produced? How does one parent species split into two? There are basically two ways. In some other books, you will also find, some other ways, parapatric and so on. But we will just focus here on two ways, allopatric and sympatric. Allopatric means a mother species splits into two because of a geographical separation or geographical isolation. The second one is there is no geographical isolation and yet the species becomes different. So a classic example is these two species of squirrels which are found on two different rims of Grand Canyon. If you've not been to Grand Canyon, it's a huge, imagine canyon crater, and there are like straight walls standing on two sides, but long time ago they were together, they were close. It is the river that flows through it that is separating them, right, and is making them different. So initially they were part of the same species, but as the Colorado River caused erosion and separated the two parts of the canyon, so now because of geographical separation, this group of squirrels couldn't go and mate with this group of squirrels, right? They got geographically separated because of the river in between them, and the river was causing erosion. So over the years, and I'm not saying 1 or 2 years, it has to be over hundreds of years, thousands of years, this group just lost the ability to mate with this group. How? Why? You've learned about evolution in the last lecture. You think logically. Use whatever you learned in the last lecture and tell me why would over the years, why would one group lose the ability to mate with this group? Why? It's a very, very simple explanation.
There's a huge hole blocking the path.
Yeah, but then what happened? There's a huge block, physically they cannot separate. But what changed in this group versus this? Why is it that they have lost the ability to interbreed? Yes, Francisco.
For years of adaptation and evolution, they're now considered as two different species.
Yes, you hit the correct answer, because over the years, so the group that was living here compared to the group that's living here, are they being exposed to the same environmental conditions? No, there might be differences, right? In the environmental conditions, when the environmental conditions are different, the mutations might be different to adapt, right? As the mutations are happening in this group and mutations are happening in this group, nature is selecting mutations that are helping the group here to survive to their own environment, and nature is helping this group to survive to their own environment. The environments have changed. So the mutations which are getting selected are changed, right? When the mutations that are getting selected are changed, now they are evolving, they are diverging from each other because of different mutations. They branched out and they continued in these two different directions. So that's why they became two different species, and over a period of long time, they have become two entirely different species. So a variety of geologic processes can isolate. There could be a flood, there could be a volcanic eruption, there could be earthquake, right? So many natural things can happen, or some of the things could be caused by human beings. How? How do we do, how are we contributing to allopatric speciation? Buildings, or let's say it was a huge forest, we clear part of the forest to build roads, freeways. So we've separated the forest into two parts, right? So if it's a huge gap between, we have, over the years, we have built roads and we have built human habitats in wild areas. So we have separated those wild areas into smaller areas where wild animals from this particular area cannot go and mate with another area, right? So over the course of years, we will see a change. Mutations are accumulating all the time. Please always remember, it's always mutations that are accumulating, but mutations themselves have no power. What is the one that is actually playing a big role? Natural selection, nature. So which mutations will get selected or retained depend upon the nature. So evolution of reproductive barriers between isolated population and its parent populations. That is how speciation occurs. So reproductive barriers will keep them separate. Now if you see here, this orange diagram here, this was the parent species, okay? So this is, let's say it was one parent species and some kind of geologic or geographic separation has occurred. This is a geographic barrier because a mountain just came up. So now this species has split into two. And one group is on this area, one group is on this area. Now depending upon the time that has passed between the two species when they can come together again, let's say it was only temporary for a few years and somehow these members of the two groups can again come together, they have still retained the ability to interbreed. That means they have not become two different species. However, if the time that passes between the two groups is a long time, too many mutations have accumulated and nature has given a thumbs up or a thumbs down to too many mutations, then these two groups become so different. It's kind of like, try to imagine you are very good friends with one of your classmates or from kindergarten, and then you go on a short holiday. You were only away for 10 days. You come back, nothing changes between you and your friend. You were just away for 10 days. However, one of you, your parents moved, so you've moved away for 10 years. Then you come back. Are you still do you still as close to that friend from elementary school now after coming back 10 years? It's like too much time has passed. I don't even know this person, who this person has become, right? It's exactly the same logic. So depends upon how much time has passed will dictate if this will become two different species or not. Now we move to sympatric. Sympatric is a new species arises within the same geographical area. There was no geographical separation, and one of the examples they